Good morning, viewers and listeners of Concerned Citizens Media. Welcome back again. Nice to have you here. So I start by to share some news in reading and some videos at the end of the reading material. Thank you again for coming back. Let's get started. Today is going to be the shortest video, I hope so. Ethiopia attack in two northern regions intensifies, Tigray forces say. An air and ground offensive by Ethiopian troops and their allies against rebellious forces from the northern Tigray region is intensified, a spokesperson for the Tigray forces said on Wednesday, claiming staggering casualties. Getachew Reda of the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) told Reuters by phone that the Ethiopian military and allies from the Amhara region were fighting the Tigrayan forces on several fronts in both the Amhara and Afar regions, which neighbors Tigray. A spokesperson for the Ethiopian military didn't immediately respond to a request for a comment. The military and the government have not acknowledged a fresh offensive, which the TPLF says began with airstrikes last week, days after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was sworn in for a new 5-year term. It is an ongoing fight, and the number of casualties is staggering, Getachew said, adding that he could not give details of the number of dead or wounded. He said there was fighting near the town of Waldia in Amara, and that fighting had resumed in Afar in the Haro and Chifra area near the Amara border. Reuters was not able to independently verify the situation on the ground or to confirm casualty numbers because the area is close to journalists and many phone connections are down. The fighting has raised fears that it could further destabilize the Horn of Africa nation of 109 million people and plunge Tigray deeper into famine. The conflict has already drawn in Ethiopia's neighbor, the secretive and repressive nation of Eritrea, which sent troops across the border to support the Ethiopian military when the conflict erupted in November 2020. Aid workers citing witness told Reuters that Eritrean fighters were still inside Ethiopia and taking part in the conflict. Eritrean Information Minister Yemane Gebre Meskel didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. Another humanitarian worker citing witness said Eritrean forces were fighting Tigrayans in Berhale, a town in the Afar region. The United States State Department said on Tuesday it was considering the use of economic sanctions to penalize parties responsible for the violence. Thousands of civilians have been killed and millions displaced by fighting since war erupted in Tigray. Tigrayan forces were initially beaten back but recaptured most of the region in July and pushed into the neighboring Amhara and Afar regions, displacing hundreds of thousands of more people. Amhara claims the western Tigray a swath of fertile farmland with a strategically important border with Sudan, which has been under Amara control since the fighting began. Tigray's borders are now surrounded by hostile forces, and the United Nations says the government is blocking food aid to hundreds of thousands of starving people, a charge it denies. World Health Organization Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said on Wednesday that in Tigray, more than 90% of the population needed food aid, and about 400,000 people were living in a famine-like condition based on the latest United Nations analysis. We are seeing acute malnutrition rates at level comparable to those we saw at the onset of the 2011 Somalia famine, he said. In that famine in Somalia, 260,000 people died. Tedros said no medical supplies had gone into Tigray since July. Just a fraction of health facilities in Tigray remain operational due to a lack of fuel and supplies. People with chronic illness are dying due to lack of both food and medicine, he told a news conference in Geneva. The Prime Minister's spokesperson, Bilene Sium, and Leah Tadesse, the health minister, didn't immediately respond to Reuters' message requesting comment on Tedros' statement. Credit Reuters. So the situation is very bad and very tense. And the call for ceasefire is not working when it comes to Abiy Ahmed. Biden to meet Kenya president as war roils nearby Ethiopia. President Joe Biden is set to hold his first one-on-one in-person talks as president with an African leader on Thursday, hosting Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta. As war and humanitarian crisis roil neighboring Ethiopia, according to the White House. The Oval Office talks come just weeks after Biden signed an executive order threatening to levy sanctions against Ethiopia Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and other leaders involved in a conflict gripping the Tigray region if steps are not taken soon to wind down the 11-month-old war. But the situation appears to have only worsened on the ground, with Tigrayan forces saying Ethiopian government has launched a long-threatening major military offensive against them in an attempt to end the war. A statement from the Tigray External Affairs Office earlier this week alleged that hundreds of thousands of Ethiopian regular and irregular fighters launched a coordinated assault on several fronts. Kenya, which shares a border with Ethiopia, has long had a strong relationship with the United States, partnering with Washington in effort to thwart Islamic terrorism. Kenya currently holds the presidency of the United Nations Security Council, a post that rotates monthly. One reason why Kenyatta is in the United States. Kenya also has been relatively vocal among African nations on the war in Ethiopia. Speaking to reporters at the United Nations on Tuesday, Kenyatta said The two sides need to come to a political resolution because we do not believe that there is any military solution. The Biden administration is conducting an interagency review as it considers targets that might be hit by sanctions. The review is in part to make certain all agencies are fully on board with proposed targets, according to a senior administration official who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the internal deliberation. The Biden administration has said it would move forward with sanctions quickly if there is not a dramatic shift on the ground. The United Nations has warned that hundreds of thousands are living in the human-made famine-like condition as the conflict festers. With Ethiopian government rejecting international meddling in its affairs, recent emphasis has been placed on trying to find an African solution to the crisis that has killed thousands, some now by starvation. The US and United Nations say Ethiopian troops have prevented passage of trucks carrying food and other aid. Scores of people have starved to death, the Associated Press has reported. Credit for this one, Associated Press. Okay, the last part for today's reading. United States announced additional humanitarian assistance for the northern Ethiopian crisis. The United States providing more than 26 million additional assistance to respond to the humanitarian crisis in northern Ethiopia. With this funding, the United States has provided nearly 663 million in humanitarian assistance for northern Ethiopia since the crisis began. This assistance from the American people will enable our international humanitarian partners to help many of the estimated 6 to 7 million people in need in northern Ethiopia, including some of the 900,000 who are facing famine-like conditions and over 48,000 refugees who have fled from northern Ethiopia to Sudan. The assistance will provide life-saving protection, shelter, essential health care, emergency food assistance, and water, sanitation, and hygiene services. This funding will also help our partners reestablish contact between family members who have been separated due to the conflict. The U.S. Agency for International Development Disaster Assistance Response Team remains deployed in support of U.S. humanitarian response efforts. We remain gravely concerned about the worsening humanitarian crisis in northern Ethiopia. Immediate, full, safe, and unhindered access for humanitarian organizations and workers is essential to provide timely, need-based assistance to those affected by the conflict and save lives. The humanitarian situation will continue to worsen without a political solution. A cessation of hostilities and an end to violence by all parties is essential. There need to be credible investigations of atrocities and human rights abuses and accountability for all those responsible. The United States and the broader international community are monitoring the situation closely to see to that see to it that the government of Ethiopia honors its public commitment to permit independent international and domestic investigations of the abuses and to hold those responsible accountable. We welcome the contribution of other donors toward this crisis response and urge others to generously support the immediate humanitarian needs created by the crisis in northern Ethiopia. So that is from United States State Department on the additional aid to the situation in Ethiopia, $26 million now. Total so far since the conflict started, $663 million. So we appreciate the United States for standing uh, with with the people, in need of humanitarian aid. So we appreciate uh, very much, very much the humanitarian aid and the involvement of the United States to solve this crisis just from the beginning. But we don't have the partner on Ethiopia's side. The Ethiopian leaders claiming, as I said before, claiming all unnecessary things, claiming sovereignty, claiming the United States is jealous about the prosperity of Ethiopia, uh, also saying all nonsense things like America is telling us what to eat for breakfast, what to eat for dinner, blah, 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 blah. All these are unnecessary talks. Now the bloodshed is continuing. And Eritrea is also there. And despite all these rape and all these atrocities happen against the Tigrayan people, they are still there. They are still in Ethiopia to do more harm against uh, Tigrayans. So we highly appreciate the United States on financial and other support and in ending this conflict. Unfortunately, I repeat, we don't have the Ethiopian side, who are galvanizing all Ethiopians on false promises, false prosperity party agendas, and false claims. The global communities interfere in Ethiopia internal affairs. All these are false claims. What the international community clearly saying, the European Union, the United States, and others, please resolve your issue through dialogue, through reconciliation. Please stop the war. In this war, this bloody war. That's openly said on international stage. Nothing hidden. But Abiy don't wanna resolve this issue. He want to continue bloodshed through airstrike, bombardment, and spending the country's money on this war, unnecessary war, while people are suffering through inflation and unemployment and other ethnic tension, command post, and civil war. So he don't want to resolve. He want to put the country into crisis. He don't care. He cares. The only thing he care about his position as a prime minister. He don't care about Ethiopians. He don't care about the people suffering. People can't even buy bread these days. Inflation is like 42% in Ethiopia. So the crisis will continue as long as this man is there. He don't want to resolve. He don't want to sit and discuss the problem with all stakeholders. Give names to those movement with legitimate concern. Give them name and use his, House of Representative to give them name. He got the authority without any question, without any discussion. He called them terrorism. Everything is possible under him because no challenge. He doesn't feel any challenge. Okay, that's enough. Then let's see a couple of videos, then finish up today's presentation. Thank you again. There you go. The first one, I think, is about the tension between Somalia and Kenya on the decision already made by the United Nations. Let's see.
President Uhuru Kenyatta says he will not recognize a ruling by the International Court of Justice. The judgment largely favors Somalia in a long-running maritime border dispute. At stake is control of a 100,000 square kilometer section of the Indian Ocean. It's rich in oil and gas. Kenya says its maritime border should be drawn in a straight line eastwards, parallel to the line of latitude, but Somalia says the border should expand southwards, extending its land border.
Kenya should instead see the decision of the court as an opportunity to strengthen the relationship of the two countries and the collaboration of their neighboring people. Somalia did not choose to be a neighbor with Kenya, but it was the willing of the Almighty God so that we're forced to live as peaceful neighbors. Somalia was committed to that forever and welcomes it now.
Decision is, in the circumstances, a zero-sum game, which will only strain the relations between our two countries. It will also reverse the social, political, and economic gains and potentially aggravate the peace and security situation in the fragile Horn of Africa region.
Al Jazeera's Catherine Soy has more now from Nairobi.
This statement by Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta comes as no surprise. Even before the court ruling, government officials had been saying they will not respect it, somewhat anticipating the outcome of it. They say that they will defend, Kenya will defend its territory, they will not give up an inch of it. We've also heard from President of Somalia, Farmajo, who says that this is an opportunity for the two countries to sit and talk. It's very unclear to see whether Kenya is willing to take that position right now because they have held a very hardline position. If you remember, Kenya withdrew from this case back in March, and now it has said that it will not respect the decision of the court. The court does not have the jurisdiction to enforce its ruling, so it's going to be very difficult to see what's going to happen going forward. The court's ruling, however, is final. The decision of the court is final, but then any aggrieved country can go place its grievances to the UN Security Council. So a lot of people are waiting to see what's going to happen going forward. Is there going to be a push for more talks between the two countries? Is Kenya going to soften its stance a bit? But at this moment, Kenya says it will not respect the court's decision, and it will do anything to protect its boundaries.
Cole, he's my miracle child.
Okay. This is an advertisement.
I've had 10 miscarriages, and I was never able to have any more children.
Muslim calls to prayer will be heard across Collen in Germany after local authorities give their approval for them to be broadcast over loudspeakers on Friday afternoons. City officials say the move is a gesture of respect. Collen's central mosque has been a flashpoint for anti-Muslim sentiments before, but the mayor's defended the decision now.
Collen is the city of religious freedom and diversity. Those who arrive at the main train station are greeted by the cathedral and accompanied by church bells. Many Collen residents are Muslims. Allowing the muezzin call is for me a sign of respect.
All 35 mosques in Western Cologne will be able to play the call for up to 5 minutes. The initiative comes as part of an agreement between Cologne officials and the Muslim community. Mosques seeking to broadcast it will, though, have to comply with limits on the volume and also notify neighbours in advance. Some locals we heard from are pretty much divided about the decision.
Finde ich eigentlich ganz toll. I think that's great because the Muslim community is also included. This is also very nice for the Muslims. Just as the churches ring a bell, the mosques can also make the call to prayer. I think that's very great.
It's nice for multiculturalism. Germany says we are here and we also take care of Muslims, which unfortunately some political parties don't do anymore. It makes me happy when I hear it. It's a piece of home.
Ich finde das jetzt nicht schlimm.
I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's all that great either. I live directly opposite, so I hear it all the time. The fact that you now have to listen to what is being said, whether you want to hear it or not, I don't think it's the best thing.
Ich finde es falsch.
I think it's wrong. I think religion is something personal. You don't have to bother all the people around with it. When they call out in foreign language, I think that's really bad, because then the people don't know what they're actually saying.
It's a many-sided issue. We put it up for debate.
The fear of Islam is not only in Cologne, is not only in Germany, it is everywhere. Unfortunately, in the name of Islam, they are basically hijacking the religion of Islam and misusing it for their own cause. So this leads basically to lack of trust.
Islam is not the majority in Germany. It is depending on in which city you are, but still 90% are non-Muslims.
Muslims are a part of this country and of this society. So as other religious groups are represented in Germany, the same way Muslims should also be able to be represented.
Cologne Mayor, Mr. Henriette Reker, who just delivered her city, who just bowed in front of Islam, bowed down and welcomed this demand and introduced what they demanded without asking the people in Cologne, without considering anything.
It's nothing new in a way, because it's basically what the Constitution says. I think if the relationship to the Muslim community in Cologne, in the local place, is good, and then a harmony can be there.
You know, Allahu Akbar has a certain history. It is not just Allah is greater, but it became the call of the jihad. So it has a very negative history. This call has a history of violence.
You see, the call of prayer is not something like some magical saying or some magic.
No, we don't need it anymore. The Muslims have watches now. I mean, the call of the muezzin comes from the 7th century when people didn't have a watch.
It's basically a tradition in Islam where you praise the Lord, praise Allah, praise God, and you basically call people to the prayer.
Okay, that's the debate about allowing Muslim call for prayers, and as you can hear from